some people are not meant to be leaders. So many people intuitively have those leadership skills and others don't have, and some can learn.
What did you take from that experience about leadership?
I took number one, that sometimes you need to just walk away, you need to take your power and just walk away. It's not weakness.
So, how do leaders shift from a metric first mindset to a people first one?
Leaders, CEOs, owners, it is about metrics. It is about bottom line. You have to meet the bottom line. Look, your company is not going to survive if you're not meeting the bottom line.
The leadership myth you wish would vanish tomorrow.
That leading by fear is the way you get the most productivity.
One value you refuse to compromise on.
Work-life balance.
A leadership lesson you learned the hard way.
That just because you do it yourself.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Breaking Rank, the podcast where we lead without permission. Today on Breaking Rank, we're joined by someone who has built her entire career around elevating the way we lead, not through hierarchy or ego, but through mentorship, accountability, and humanity. Lindsay Ellis is a seasoned marketing executive turned leadership expert, author of Beyond the Ordinary Leader, the No-Suck Leadership Manifesto. She's coached teams, mentored leaders, and helped organizations rethink what leadership should look like in a world where titles often come before skill. Lindsay, welcome to Breaking Rank. I'm thrilled to have you here.
Oh, I'm honored to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yes, and you, as people will not know, but you and I used to work together years ago and both experienced examples of poor leadership.
We sure did.
And probably, yes, and probably have learned a lot in the years since. So I'm excited about this conversation. So let's just dive in. So you've built this incredible platform around leadership, but before the book, before the talks and the manifesto, there's the person. So for listeners who don't know you yet, how would you describe the moment or experience that shaped your personal philosophy of leadership?
There was, multiple things that I think led up to my defining moment, but really the coup de grace was I was working for this company. I was on a marketing team and I had a manager who was in Florida and she somehow figured out how to micromanage the team in Arizona from Florida. And I'm going, what is going on? I have to check in with her when I leave to go to lunch. I have to check in with her when I leave for the day. We would work, 7 days straight if we had let's say, a week of work and then trade shows without a day off. And if you asked her for it, she's like, well, your salary. So this is just how you have to work. And I watched her call people on vacation and call people at 11 o'clock at night. And I thought, what is happening? This is not right. People started leaving the team. We were doing these tremendous things and growing the company and having great results. And at the same time, it was a team of people who were so unhappy. And, misery loves company. Everybody was kind of commiserating with each other. And that was the moment that I said, you know what? You spend most of your time at your job and you want to work with people that not only appreciate what you do, are rowing in the same direction as you, but respect you and have that common consideration and respect for you as a human being. And that really was the defining moment of me going, people are not treated like human beings. They're treated like cogs and wheels, especially by these leaders that, to no fault of their own, have just gone up because they've done well in their job and haven't been given the resources and the training they need. And now they're in this position trying to do well. And the way they think they can do well is by having all this control.
That is so important. What you mentioned is about, leadership not being about having control, because what you said earlier about we spend most of our time at work is so true. I mean, when you add up the 40 plus hours a week, we spend more time at work than we do anywhere else most of the time. And so if you're not happy at work or you have a bad manager or a bad leader, it can impact every other part of your life. And you get to that point where you're like, leadership has to be better than this, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Everybody at one time has had that job where they're really excited at first, and then all of a sudden they're just so beat down, and every Sunday they're dreading the next day, and they're so just miserable, and it's coming home and it's interrupting their time with their families and their friends, and it's just not a place that you want to be. It's not an environment that, as good leaders, we should be cultivating.
Hmm. Yeah, and it's so true that a lot of times it's because the leaders haven't had the training or the resources. For some people, I think leadership comes intuitively.
Mhm.
And for other people, it's really a skill that has to be, trained.
Right.
And yeah, and not everyone gets leadership training, as you mentioned. Sometimes it's just that we're in a job, we do a good job in that role, and we're promoted, and maybe we're not ready to actually be a leader.
Well, and let's address kind of the elephant in the room too. Some people are not meant to be leaders. Yes, so many people intuitively have those leadership skills and others don't have, and some can learn.
Mhm.
Leadership, whether you're born with it or not, you still have to develop it over the years. You still have to constantly be developing yourself, like with anything. But some people are not cut out to be leaders.
Oh, it's so true. And your book calls out some of the biggest mistakes leaders make, like micromanaging, confusing friendship with leadership, and even fearing the success of their own team members, which
Right.
is one I've witnessed a lot. So, of all of those missteps, which one do you think causes the most damage inside of organizations today?
I would say, number one has got to be micromanagement, because
Mm.
that's like the start. And actually, you know what, where you talk about people being afraid of somebody being more successful than them, a lot of
Hmm.
times those are micromanagers to begin with. They're the people that are working on ego. They're working with power, and that's what they see is they've got to have this power. They've got to be on top. They've got to be in charge. They have to have control. And they're the people that at that point, if you're going to be successful, that threatens them.
Yeah, it's so true. And how can you be a leader when you're stifling your team and not allowing them to grow because you're threatened by what their success might mean to you?
Well, and I really talk about in the book leaving a legacy, right? As a leader, as a parent, as a friend, as just a person. And a leader's greatest legacy is to get the people under them to grow and be promoted. It is not
Oh,
a
love that.
threat. It should never be looked at as a threat. You should hire people that you trust can do the job, that you feel like you can mentor, and that you want to move up. You should be looking to move up yourself by way of moving your team up too, to have somebody that you are grooming to be in your position. That is the greatest legacy of a leader.
Hmm. I completely agree.
Not holding people down, not micromanaging, giving them that autonomy and creativity and the resources they need and helping them to develop.
Hmm. And why do so many leaders think they're helping when they're actually hurting performance or culture?
I don't I think it's a matter of there's just this thought of I've got to be the boss and that's my job and I'm accountable, so they have to be accountable, because if I mess up I get in trouble, if they mess up I get in trouble. So it's more a matter of like it's accountability, it's the wanting to be in charge and be a boss, and again, like I said, it's not having the resources that you need to be a good
Hmm.
manager and understand the way to help your team. I think the other part of that is a lot of times people think, well, if I'm going to get something done right, I've got to do it myself. And that's a big misnomer and something that the managers
I've
and
been
leaders
there.
into, right? It's hard. Um, you have to put the work in at the beginning. Sometimes you get very green employees. And I'll tell you what, green employees are the best to be able to mold. You pull somebody right out of school and you're able to mold them into this rock star employee. It's going to take time. It's going to take work. And there's going to be some times where you're like, oh, they're messing up or it's taking so long. But you have to avoid that. If it's going to get done right, I've got to do it myself. And that's where that gets confused for being helpful as a leader. In
Hmm.
a
Hmm.
position of leadership, when you feel like you have to do things and that's helping, that isn't helping. That number one isn't helping the employee, but that's not helping you either, because the more you do, the more you're going to continue to do. That
Hmm.
mindset stays with you, and if you feel like it's going to take too long, you're stepping in to do it. That takes away efficiency, that takes away many times your work life balance if you're doing everything. And that certainly stifles creativity and the development of the people under you.
Oh, absolutely. And I would agree with you just from our conversation so far. Micromanaging is one of the things that I hate the most when it comes to people that have led me. um, but I think that, micromanagement is, as you appropriately called out, is often a symptom to bigger issues, and is manifested in many different ways. And I want to pivot a little bit to introspection. You talk about the necessity of introspection or the willingness to look in the mirror, which can be very uncomfortable work. So, what has introspection revealed about your own tendencies as a leader?
I will give you a great example, probably the greatest example, because I feel like so many people struggle with this. As a young employee, before I was a leader, um, I used to, and this is kind of what I talked about a little bit ago, take things home with me from work. If I had a bad day, if I had a lot to do and I was stressed, I would bring it home. And it upset me and it stressed me out. I was constantly stressed out and upset and like anxious to the point of, gosh, I didn't want to go back to work and I was worried and the week was going to start next, and in a bad mood. Here I am sitting at dinner with my, loved ones in a bad mood, or on the weekend I'm in a bad mood because I had a bad week at work or something wasn't going well. And I took the time to really look into what's going on, what is happening here. I'm losing my power as an individual, and I'm taking away from my time, my personal time. Everybody deserves to have their personal time. Everybody deserves to have their time with their families. Work is important. You need to pay your bills, but so is your family. Your family and your friends and your life is the most important. You only get one of them. And so I looked in the mirror and I thought, is this who I want to be? Do I constantly want to be in this spiral of stress, which isn't good for you health wise? It doesn't, you're not happy. And I said,
Mhm.
I'm going to stop doing this. I'm going to make this shift to where I'm going to stop bringing it home. If I have a bad day, you know what? I can come home. I can tell, at that time was my boyfriend, very quickly, here's what happened. I didn't have a great day. This is what happened, and be done with it there. Squash it right there. It doesn't have to take over my whole night. It doesn't have to take over,
Mhm.
the entire time that I'm doing something on my personal time, when I'm watching TV, when I'm reading a book, on the weekends. I don't have to constantly think about it. And right there, it stopped. And, it's been years since then. And I've had times where all of a sudden work has gone bad. And I've started to slip back into that, letting it come into my life on my off time. And I've taken a step back and gone, you're not going to fall into this again. You are not letting this rule your life and giving up your power to where you are constantly worrying and constantly stressed. And that's a hard shift.
Mhm. Yeah, no, very hard shift. And I'm surprised that you were able to squash it when you got home, because when I have a bad day at work, it tends to stick with me for a while. And I am not able to just
Right.
compartmentalize, because so much of my work has become part of my identity and has become part of how I, you know, define myself, which is something that I didn't want to happen, but something that just kind of happened over the years. And so to be able to go home and say, you know what, I had a bad day. That's the end of this. And I can move on and focus on other things, is just so far fetched for me, because, or so foreign for me, I should say, because I just don't know how to compartmentalize it like that.
I'll tell you what, if you figure out how to do it, the freedom that you get from it is huge. It's leaps and bounds. I mean, it changes your life.
What is the hardest thing that you've ever had to admit to yourself about your leadership?
Let's see, hardest thing I ever had to admit to myself. It's that sometimes it is hard to cope with the fact that you don't hire the best people, and that
Mhm.
you can be, one of my bosses used to say, you can be wrong, but you can't be wrong for long because it starts to impact the
Mm.
work. And it's really hard to know, like, when you interview people, people really sell themselves to you. and they're not always what they sell. And sometimes you have to come to terms with that and go, you know what? As much as I know the work is coming back on my plate and I'm going to have to help because I need to get, let go of this employee or put them on an action plan and look at, letting go of them. Um, I had to really learn that that's what you have to do. That being a leader isn't just about, mentoring people to be great, but it's also about knowing when things are not working and knowing when you have to have those hard conversations and you have to make those decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. And on the flip side, on the one hand, there's you having to give that feedback to the employees, but on the other side, was there a moment when someone gave you feedback that just really stung, or but it ultimately changed the way that you showed up as a leader?
I was working for a company and I was working for seemingly probably one of the most ridiculous people that I have ever worked for. And I say this, and this is in my book, in Things That Make You Go, there's a whole chapter on it. This man would burp and fart in the middle of meetings. He would, in the middle of like a Zoom call, get up and excuse himself to go to the bathroom and then talk about what he just did. He would sit in the conference room, and if he was mad at you, he would get on the loudspeaker and be like, Lindsay, get the F to my office or get the F to the boardroom. And I had to come to terms with the fact that, like, everything, he was such a micromanager that every single thing that anybody did, he was mad at. He had a fight with me over the different shades of pink in paper going in an Easter basket on a day when we were doing a new video for a website, when we had all these moving parts. Every to me, everything that I did was wrong to him, and it's only because he had to control everything. And I was number 5 marketing director in 2 years. Um,
Wow.
and now I knew why, right? Because of all the red flags with him and the way he treated people. And there was one day where he really just came down on me about everything. And I was like, wow, this is terrible. I feel like I'm terrible at my job. I feel like I don't know what I walked into here, and I just wanted to leave. And I stuck it out for a while, but it
Mhm.
was this man who constantly just beat me down and constantly found any little thing he could do to make me feel bad. I was brand new and I made a flyer the size of a flyer, an 8.5 by 11, and he's screaming at me from the boardroom, which is a ways away past a bunch of people's offices, that they don't make flyers that are 8.5 by 11. They do half sheets instead. And I should have effing known that. And I'm like, okay, I'm failing at everything. I'm failing at flyers. I'm failing at paper, pink paper. And that absolutely really stung to me because I had always, no matter what the situation was, I felt like I had always really excelled. Or if I didn't excel, at least I tried. And I always had a
Mhm.
good relationship with my superiors. And this wasn't working. We didn't see eye to eye. He wasn't a nice person. And it was really like I was internalizing it a lot.
Mhm. What did you take from that experience about leadership?
I took number 1 that sometimes you need to just walk away, that's you need to take your power and just walk away. It's not weakness. Um,
Mhm.
it is not worth it to stay in something that you are so miserable. You need to try. You need to try. And I did everything I could. I had some one-to-ones with him and sit downs, but really I learned that sometimes you need to just go, okay, I made a mistake and I need to leave. But I also learned as a leader, and I don't even know if I can say I learned, he was the exact opposite of any type of leader I would ever be. And I looked at him, at everything that he did and the way that he treated his employees, and I thought, my God, I can't believe anybody works for him. I remember we had different locations, and all the managers of these locations were like, oh God, hopefully he's not coming in today. He's not with you, right? And, don't be upset if he calls you stupid. This is what he does to people. And I thought, this is not the way you treat people. And I don't care how mad I am at anybody, I would never treat them like this. So I think it was the biggest takeaway for me. And the biggest learning was sometimes you just need to, I hate to say cut and run, but sometimes you do. And it's not weakness.
Yeah, that's a great message. I mean, sometimes you do just have to walk away, and people are afraid to walk away. And sometimes it's hard to walk away because it's your livelihood, right? So much is riding on this that it's
Absolutely.
like you sometimes are forced to deal with leaders, bad leaders, because you have no other choice at that time. So if you
Right.
can walk away, right? And
Absolutely.
that
Well,
just
and I
kind of
think too,
uh
I was
yeah,
going
go
to
ahead.
say,
Sorry.
and I stuck it out for 9.5 months, longer than I had wanted to leave because of that. But then
Hmm.
when I started to get a lot of interviews, I was like, okay, I feel like I'm going to get something else. So it's not to say like, yes, you shouldn't put yourself in debt. You shouldn't, leave and make it to where you're going to be more stressed out because you can't pay your bills, but you should absolutely not feel bad about taking another opportunity, about putting yourself out there, about trying to make a change because it's not always you. It's not, there's definitely times where, it's you, but this is not a sign of weakness that you're a failure and you did something wrong. And that's what I had to really come to terms with.
Oh yeah. And that was kind of the perfect segue into talking about empowerment versus like controlling leadership. You are known for advocating empowerment over control, but many leaders feel that if they loosen their grip, everything's going to fall apart. So, what does true empowerment look like? Not in theory, but in actual day to day leadership.
Absolutely. True empowerment is taking that team that you've hired or even that you've inherited and allowing them to do their jobs. It's putting in the effort up front to make sure that you've given them the resources they need, making sure that you are having check ins with them to make sure that they're supported. But it's allowing them to do their jobs. That is empowerment. It's also allowing them to make mistakes. This is really hard sometimes because again, you're accountable to someone, they're accountable to you, but some of the greatest learnings come from mistakes. So it's allowing
Mhm.
for those teachable moments. It's letting them know you have an open door policy, come in anytime you need anything, let's talk about it. It's giving them the resources they need, it's checking in with them and mentoring them through any issues that they have, but it's truly allowing them to do what you hired them to do.
Mhm. And it sounds like what you're describing also sounds like psychological safety to me, because I've worked in roles where you're afraid to make a mistake, you're afraid to fail, and you can't be perfect in every job. You cannot be perfect, and you will fail sometimes. And sometimes the greatest lessons come from failure.
Right? 100%. Chasing perfection it's something you're never going to get there. You can chase it, but if that's what you're constantly trying to get to, you're going to be let down because there's no one that's perfect. We're humans. We're all going to make mistakes. And that's the thing too, as a leader, the people under you are going to make mistakes. The other thing
Hmm.
too, which I think I would be remiss if I didn't say is in talking about like having new employees that haven't done the job before or that are fresh out of school, you find especially people that come right out of school, they tend to ask a lot of questions. Like they are afraid. They've still got the training wheels on. They're coming to you for answers for everything because they are afraid that they're going to make a mistake and they're afraid to
Hmm.
like really jump in and get their hands dirty. And that's where it's really important as a leader. This is kind of the pinnacle here in developing them is don't give them the answer to everything. Make sure they have the resources and when they come to you and they ask you that question for the fourth or fifth time, you go back and you go, we talked about this. What do you think? Let me know what you think. Let's talk about it. Or, you know what? I know that you're going to do good, that you're able to do this because we've talked about it. Go do it and let's look at it afterwards. And if it's not right, we'll fix it. But it's giving them that opportunity and not constantly keeping, you have to take the training wheels off. They're never going to develop if you don't. So you have to question, you have to kind of push back a little bit and say, we talked about this, you tell me or what do you think? If they come to you and they're like, well, what do you think about this? Or what should I do with this? Turn it around. What do you think? Let me know what you think and let's talk about it.
Oh, that's great. That's a really great way. I mean, particularly, we'll talk about mentorship in a little bit because I know that that's really important to you. But it's really important to empower people to be able to make mistakes. And that's the way that they're going to grow. And that's the way that they're going to learn. And having a boss that allows that really inspires trust and loyalty, which can have a huge impact on your working relationship and on the job that they do. So I'll ask, What behaviors separate leaders who inspire loyalty from those who inspire turnover?
The ones who inspire loyalty are allowing for that autonomy and are allowing for the creativity and are instilling trust in their team while at the same time keeping an eye on what's going on. It's not saying you can't keep an eye on things. It's not saying that you don't have those, one-to-one conversations and you're not setting goals and making sure that they're achieving their goals and, meeting due dates and things, but it's allowing for that autonomy. It's taking your hands off and allowing them to do that job and meet the goals that you've given them versus those bosses that are constantly like, what's going on with this? Why haven't you done this yet? How come you haven't turned this in? Where are you going? How come you left work before I did? I stayed till 10 o'clock last night. You only stayed till 7, things that
Mm-hmm.
are not, don't need to do that. You need to give people that opportunity. You need to respect that everybody has a life outside of work. And you need to me, it's always, I've had people that come to me and go, is it okay if I take a day off? It's always okay if you take your PTO. It's always okay if you use your vacation time, and you should. And that's another part of a leader, that the ones that inspire versus promote turnover are the ones that you go on vacation and I'm calling you 10 times to find out where you are on a project or
In there.
how we step. We all have, haven't we? To
Mm-hmm.
me, you need a team that's going to perform well and that's going to be loyal and stay as a team that's not burnt out. At the point
Mm-hmm.
that you have employees that are burnt out, you're not giving them the support they need. You're not giving them the opportunity to be autonomous and creative. They're looking for another job. They're burnt out. They're unhappy. All of that leads to them not doing a good job too. Productivity goes down with all of that. I look at these jobs. I was in one where the accounting team was working on budgets and they stayed until 2 o'clock in the morning working on the budgets. And then they came back at 7 a.m. and the owners of the company came in and gave them all high fives. Um, as a leader, if my team stayed until 2 o'clock in the morning, I would be like, all of you go home now and go to sleep. Like, you don't need to be here. Thank you. You should have never done that and stayed that late, but I
Mm-hmm.
appreciate your commitment. But go home and go to sleep. You know,
Yeah,
they're no good.
that's interesting because I work in legal, and those types of behaviors are rewarded in legal.
Mhm.
I might work with lawyers on a pitch until 3 o'clock in the morning, and I can think of two separate occasions where I literally had to ask, can I go to bed now? I will wake up and I will get right on this in the morning, but I'm so exhausted, I can't see the
Right.
paper in front of me anymore. And I've had to literally ask permission to go to bed. And then I've been on team meetings where the group assembles and my bosses have been like, oh, great work to Joe Smith over here who worked all weekend to get this done. That just shows dedication. And you're setting this example that that's what everyone should strive for. We should all be striving to be working all weekend and to work late. And I've even seen it become a competition with people. It's like, oh, I
Right.
worked, 12 hours yesterday and I was up until 3 a.m. And it becomes a competition over who's worked the most hours, as if working the most hours makes you more productive or more efficient or a better leader. And that's not true. But that's the behavior that was rewarded. And that really goes into the culture.
You're right. People reward that as dedication and work ethic. And it's not, let's talk about this in terms of businesses. Everybody's concerned about the bottom line, right? As an owner of a company, you're concerned about the bottom line. You want people to work hard. You want people to get their work done. I certainly do not advocate for not having overtime. I definitely think that there are times where people have to work overtime. There are times where you have to work late. There's times where you may have to work a weekend and put extra time in. But that being said, as a leader, you need to know when to say when. So if people are working around the clock, if they're too tired to even read the words on the paper, like you said, how productive are they to you at that point? How
Hmm.
they're so tired, when did the mistakes start? Here you're working against yourself. I worked for a company that decided to bring lunch in every day so nobody would take a lunch break. So they would just grab their lunch from the kitchen and go back to their desk. Nobody had a break. You are absolutely cultivating an environment of people that are burnt out, and not, your production is going to go down instead of up. You want your output to go up. You're not growing that way. So
Mhm.
making that constant, making it what everybody is striving to. The North Star is to work as hard and as late as you can to make sure that you're never leaving before your boss. All of those things are just creating an environment of burnt out employees.
So true, so true. And your book argues that most leaders are ordinary, but they don't have to be. So, in your view, what defines an ordinary leader versus one who moves beyond ordinary?
An ordinary leader is one that goes in and does their job. Like they know what their job is, they know what their team is supposed to do. They meet their goals, the team meets the goals. Just kind of stagnant, right? They're happy with what they're doing. They're just kind of stagnant. They're getting it done, rinse and repeat. That beyond the ordinary leader is that leader that we are talking about before where wants to leave a legacy, wants to make a difference, wants to be successful while at the same time creating success for their team, wants to really come in and understand the vision and the values of the company and make sure that they have a team of rock stars that's working towards that vision and mission, all while all of them collectively are going to be successful
Mhm.
and not walking around, like I said, burnt out, taking care of themselves, taking care of the company at the same time. So it's a leader that really values the people on their team. They value the company. And it's not just, I'm coming into my job every day because it's what I'm doing to pay my bills. I'm coming in because as a leader, leading people, mentoring people, and getting them to the next step and meeting goals and helping to scale a company is what drives me. It's what makes me happy. It's what makes me successful. It's not just I'm going to go in and I'm going to do my job and I'm going to make
Mhm.
sure my team is doing their job. That's the difference.
Yeah. So, going back to your book, what story from your book feels the most vulnerable for you? The one that you hope that really resonates with readers?
I think probably the most vulnerable story for me is absolutely the one we were talking about earlier, which is taking the time to be introspective. It was the story about coming home and being upset all the time and being miserable at my job and feeling like you know what, that was okay because I was at my job all the time and I should be working hard, and if I had a bad day I was going to bring it home with me because that was the main part of my life was my job. So if I had a bad day that should seep into my night, right? If I was mad I was going to be mad all night. If I was upset, if I felt like I was a failure or doing bad, I was going to feel that way all night and I was going to feel that way all weekend. It's the introspection. It's that taking a good hard look at yourself and going, this is not the way I want to live and this is not the way I want to do things. That is the most vulnerable. That's in saying to yourself, this is a weakness. This is a weakness. It's an area of opportunity. It's something that if I want to be happy in my life, then I need to change what I'm doing.
And you make the argument that people and culture, not metrics, but people, fuel organizational success. So, how do leaders shift from a metric first mindset to a people first one?
My gosh, it's such a good question, right? Because leaders, CEOs, owners, it is about metrics. It is about bottom line. You have to meet the bottom line. Look, your company is not going to survive if you're not meeting the bottom line. But at the end of the day, if you don't care about your people, if they are cogs in the wheel, if they are just there to meet the purpose of you need somebody filling that seat and you need somebody doing that job, they're not going to stay. You're spending all of this money to hire people that you feel are the best, the most qualified, the ones that are going to meet those metrics and exceed those metrics. That's who you're hiring. But if you are not caring about their well-being, if you're not caring about, the fact that they don't have goals or they don't have the resources that they need, if you're not caring about them as a person, they're not going to stay. And that is at the end of the day, in terms of like money, it costs so much money to train somebody and then to lose them.
Mhm.
Time is money. So you're just, so many of these companies are going through this hamster wheel of hiring and then they quit, hiring and then the person quits. You bring on somebody else, you train them, you treat them the same way, and they leave. It's so important to realize that if you want your metrics to be met, and you want to scale your company and you want to make that a consistent practice, that not only do you need to know what those metrics are, but you need to know that you're taking care of the people that are meeting those metrics for you. This is your
Mhm.
team that is coming in. This is not, I look at this from a business owner standpoint of these people are coming in to do work for you, right? If I'm a business owner, these people are doing work for me. It's not their company, but I want them to care about my company as much as they would care about their own. And if I don't treat them well, if I don't take care of them and they leave, then that's a problem. They're not going to feel like it's their company. They're not going to feel like they're, satisfied with what they're doing. It's not going to lead to them being happy, which is going to lead to them leaving. And I'll
So
tell you
true.
what, all the training in the world, you can train them up to be much better at the next job they go to, is really what's happening. So you're spending all this time and all this money training them to be great and to meet these metrics. You've now increased their net worth for their next job.
It's so funny because when you just said that, it reminded me of Beyonce's song Ring the Alarm. From years ago, Beyonce had this song Ring the Alarm, and the message of the song was basically like, you're going to be getting all of these things, like basically you're in a relationship with someone and you're training them, and then they leave you, and the next woman gets to benefit from everything that you
Right.
trained that person, that person for. And so that's her whole kind of concept of that song, or at least the way that I interpret it, is like, if I let you go, you're going to be doing all of these things if I let you go, and I've invested way too much. And so I've never even thought about that in a career context, but the way that you just said that, it completely resonates with me, because through Beyonce, of course, but
Right.
it's so true. Like, you're basically training people that are going to benefit from your training at another company. Another company is going to benefit from the work
Absolutely.
you put in.
They sure are. And you're
Yeah,
back at square one trying to hire somebody. Well, and
exactly.
let's talk about where we are right now in the economy, in the job market. It's not easy to find good people. And
Hmm.
there's a whole different work ethic right now in this generation, and you hear it from everybody in business. It's so hard to find good help. It's so hard to find people that stay. There's no loyalty. Well, there's no security either. And if we're not making these people feel secure, helping them to cultivate, a career within the company, giving them what they need. Not only are they not meeting metrics and helping you make money and scale, they're not staying.
Hmm. Yeah, it's so true. Yeah. And I think it's a restructuring of the way that, of company culture. Basically, it's a rethinking of the culture of a company, because people think, oh, I'm just going to start a business and we're going to produce this thing, this product, this service, and that's all there is to it. But you're working with human beings, and when you work
Right.
with human beings, you have to create a culture where human beings can work and feel safe and feel, productive, and feel valued. And you can't get around that. So many places I've worked have tried to set this standard that it's like, well, this is just the company and this is the way it is and this is how we do things. And it's like, no, if you want people to stay, you have to build a culture that supports that. You have to invest in your culture.
I worked for a company, and I will tell you, the CEO, she was phenomenal. And why? Not only was she smart, but because she did something that was so little. She would come to the regional offices. Her um, office was in Chicago at our headquarters, but she'd come to the regional offices and she would go cubicle to cubicle and office to office and say hello to every single person. She knew everybody's name. She knew what they did. And this is a
Wow.
company, this is a Fortune 500 company with 5,000 plus employees. And she would go to every single cubicle and every single office and say hello. It doesn't, people feel like taking care of their employees and cultivating a good culture is hard. It's not. I mean,
Hmm.
it's the way you treat people, the way you talk to people. It's little things like that. Going a CEO of a company who is way up here in kind of that crystal castle in her office in Chicago, actually knowing everybody and valuing the fact that they work for her and are helping her to be in the position she's in.
Hmm. So I want to kind of pivot to the message of this show, which the message is really about breaking rank. And one thing that I loved is the cover of your book totally aligns with the branding of my show, because you see the paper airplanes and you see the one that kind of goes away. And it reminded me so much of breaking rank and leading in ways that challenge outdated norms. So, what is your biggest breaking rank moment? A time when you made a decision that went against traditional leadership expectations?
Gosh, let's see. That's a really good question because you know what? I will tell you, I was working for this company and we had just had a changeover in leadership. So I was the director of our marketing team. We were a national marketing team. So I had teams in like three different states. And the CMO left. So we had new leadership, we had new rules. Everybody was like freaking out and what's going to happen and is my job safe? There all these changes were coming down. And look, the only thing guaranteed in life is change here, right? And you have to be able to deal with it. And I said, you know what? Okay, let's. I happen to have the team in for a yearly planning session, and I said, you know what? We're going to stop planning right now. We are going to take a break. We're going to go out to lunch. We are going to go to an activity. We went and did an escape room, and we're going to spend quality time together as a team and stop focusing on everything that we're scared of. We're going to get back to feeling like we're still our team at heart, right? We're the same team, nothing's changed. I wanted them to still feel like they had a leader that was going to advocate for them. It didn't matter that somebody new stepped into that CMO position. They still had me. I was still their buffer between, the CMO and corporate and our team. And I wanted them to realize that nothing had changed and that here we had spent a couple weeks with all this trepidation and I knew everybody was talking to everybody. Being as how I build up a lot of trust with my teams, a lot of times I have individuals that'll come to me and be like, hey, this is what people are saying. They never know that as they're all gossiping, it comes back to me, which
Hmm.
it became really good because I was able to go, okay, let's stop this. There's too much gossip going on. There's too much trepidation. Let's go do something fun. Let's get our mind off of this. And then let's come back and let's regroup and let's plan and let's stop making our focus on the scariness of what's going to happen and put it back on doing our jobs and making sure that we're doing the best we can and meeting our goals. And at the end of the day, if we're doing what we need to and we are meeting and exceeding our goals, then really that's what's going to be looked at. That's what we are
Hmm.
doing. That's what we're here for. And things may change, but we'll deal with it. So that
Yeah,
started to be really breakout for me in a lot of jobs, which is sometimes you just need to get away. Sometimes you need to gain perspective and then come back and look at it again.
absolutely. So, for leaders navigating hybrid work, burnout, or high turnover, what's the biggest leadership blind spot you think organizations are failing to address?
I think what they're failing to address is that, especially with hybrid work, there needs to be a little bit more support and more resources. And I think that, and you'd think at this point, after COVID's been, kind of gone for the past couple of years, it would have shifted. People are still in that same mindset. Like it's the same if you're hybrid or if you're in the office. Um, it's the same, you have to vary your leadership style. You have to vary your leadership style based on who's on your team if they're working hybrid. It's not the same if you're working from home versus working in the office. And I definitely don't advocate that people should be back in the office. I'm not that person that's like you have to be in the office to be productive. I actually am kind of like the counter to that. I think people can be very productive from home, but you need to realize it's not the same. So it's going back and going, if you are going to have a hybrid work environment or a remote work environment, it is different than having people in the office. And you need to realize that there are some drawbacks. So you need to start figuring out things like what's the cadence of meetings. It's not the answer to have a meeting every hour of the day to keep control of things. You still need to give people that empowerment, but it's a little bit different. The meetings look different, the schedule looks different. The who you hire looks different. So the blind spot really is assuming that everybody's the same, no matter where they work, no matter how they work, whether they're in the office, whether they're in your office or they're in a regional office. People are not all the same. And that you need to vary your leadership style based on your team, based on where they are, and based on their personalities.
Yeah, absolutely. So, before we wrap up, I want to do a quick rapid fire. So, just answer with the first thing that comes to mind. Okay. So, the leadership myth you wish would vanish tomorrow.
That leading by fear is the way you get the most productivity.
One value you refuse to compromise on.
Work life balance.
A leadership lesson you learned the hard way.
That just because you do it yourself doesn't mean it's going to get done better. So, doesn't get just because, well, I need to say that again. If you want it done better, you've got to do it yourself.
Great. Okay. If listeners do just one thing differently after hearing this episode, what should it be?
Looking at themselves in the mirror and taking stock of who they are as a leader and as a worker and as a person.
Love it. So, Lindsay, thank you so much for this conversation. And I'm so proud of you and so thrilled to know you. Your work is definitely pushing leaders to do better and be better and lead with intention and integrity. So, this has been very powerful. And I've learned a few things along the way that I want to incorporate into my own leadership style. So, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun.
And to our audience, if you enjoyed today's episode, share it with someone who's ready to break rank in their leadership journey, or just share it for the heck of it because there's a lot of golden nuggets in here of information that can help anyone to become a better leader. So, with that, until next time, bye everyone.